Hey peeps, I'm James Buckle of Engage Pixel, and I recently released my first indie game, Captain Kaon. It's a little tilt and thrust shooter where you pilot a gunship around the tunnels of Ceres and you shoot at people who look at you funny. It took nearly 4 years of my life to make, but it was either that or get a real job. Something the games industry does at the end of a project is to have a postmortem to analyse how things went. As part of the postmortem for Captain Kaon, I'm making this video series so I can share some of the lessons I've learned on the project. As my entire industry experience was working in QA, I've had to learn a lot of new things along the way. In each episode I'm going to talk about different aspects of making a game, why it's important, and how it went for Captain Kaon. This isn't simply going to be a vlog where I talk about how great my game is and how well I made it. Firstly, because the reviews were mostly 7s, it's alright, it's fun, but it's not going to change your life. But it's also because I had a lot of struggles. There were a lot of things I had to learn to do, like coding AI or animating. Things I'd never done before. And there were a lot of things that went wrong, a lot of problems that I had to overcome. But by working through these problems and learning from them, I've become much better at making games. Or at least I hope I have, because otherwise I've wasted 4 years of my life and enough money to buy a very nice car. I'm going to use this video series to share everything I know about game development, which will hopefully help other people who are making their own games. Here are a few of the subjects I'm planning on covering. If I somehow manage to get all of that done, then here are a few things that I'll try and cover as well. If you're interested in game development, then stick around. I'll share some insights and tell you the story of how to make Captain Kaon. So I should probably start with who the hell am I and why should you care? Which is a fair question. After all, YouTube will let anybody have a channel, even me. I started making games when I was about 8 years old on the ZX Spectrum, which was a nifty piece of kit, but for those of you who were too young to remember it, the experience can generally be summed up like this. Are your ears bleeding yet? And then I moved on to making games on the Amiga, which was a really cool piece of kit where you don't have to save stuff on tape and have it fail 9 times out of 10. After taking computer studies at college, where I had to spend a year of my life learning COBOL, a programming language normally reserved for the 6th level hell, I got a job at the QA department for EA Bullfrog. This was a pretty incredible moment for me. When I was a kid, they were my favourite developer. For those of you who don't remember Bullfrog, they were a powerhouse of British developers in the 90s. They were responsible for games such as Populous, Powermonger, Syndicate, Theme Park World, Magic Carpet, and of course Dungeon Keeper. And who didn't love Dungeon Keeper? I mean, that game was amazing. I didn't stay there for very long though, I think about 4 months, and I spent half of that in a cupboard. It was a 3-hour commute from my hometown, so I was spending 6 hours a day crammed into a train carriage, and no job's worth that. Then I found out that the Creative Assembly were actually based in my hometown, or slightly outside my hometown, a little village. This was just after they released Shogun, and no one really knew who they were at this point. But I managed to get a QA job there, working on Medieval Total War, which was an awesome game to good. So I decided it was probably a good time to move on. And it had been 12.5 years. I'd loved my time there, but it was time for a change. So I left and I made my own little indie game, Captain Kaon, which became a not so little indie game, and then gobbled up all my savings until I finally released it this past April. I guess the next thing to do is to explain what a postmortem is in a little more detail and why the industry does them. At the end of a project, a team will look back at the successes and failures and analyse them and try and learn some lessons that will help improve things on the next project. This is an opportunity for some self-reflection and professional growth, but also a way of ensuring that the team improves as a whole. You look at the problems you had and you share them with the rest of the team so that they can find solutions and ensure you aren't pulling your hair out on the next project. The first postmortem I took part in was for Medieval Total War, which was about 15 years and 5 stone ago. It took the form of a company meeting where both the Medieval and the Rome teams took part. This amounted to about 40 or so people back then. We each took it in turn to stand up in front of everyone and say our piece. When it was my go, I think I spent about 30 to 40 minutes just talking about here's how QA were good, and here's the problems we had, and here's how we can improve the general team interaction between QA and the developers. It was quite a long meeting on the whole. It took about 3 days to get through for everyone, and it's the only time I've had a postmortem that was that open and that useful and that long. but it led to immeasurable improvements on the development team for Rome and for later projects. Unfortunately, that kind of postmortem only really works with small teams. Less effective postmortems have included all the leads going into an office and having a little chat amongst themselves, which was more of an exercise in self-preservation than a way of improving the team. Another was to use a post-it note system where post-it notes would be put on the... You'd write your issue on a post-it note, you'd stick it on a board. Other people would then, if they agreed with this issue, they would take a little sticker off and just put it on the post-it note, and then, yeah, I'm not really sure what that was supposed to achieve. It kind of felt about useful as writing your issues on peanuts, feeding them to an elephant and dealing with them in the order that it crapped them out. For Captain Kaon, I have no team to have a postmortem with. I could sit in front of a mirror and have a chat with myself, but that's a level of narcissism that I'm far too nerdy to deal with. There is, however, an indie community out there full of talented people who are trying to make their own games, and there's a lot of young people interested in how games are made and looking to get started in the games industry. So this video series is for them, and I hope it's helpful. Of course, anyone else who's interested is more than welcome too. Thanks for watching this intro. Stick around for the first video where I'll be discussing game concepts and why it's important. If you want to follow the series, then hit the subscribe button and you'll get each new episode in your feed as soon as it's released. Until then, keep playing games and I'll see you next time.